Hotel,
Hotep,
hotel.
Hotep, peace, shalom, assalamu alaikum, konnichiwa. Um, Tonight I have Brother Anu with me in the studio. Um, and tonight we're going to talk about the Moors and their contributions um, to civilizations throughout history. Brother Anu is going to elaborate.
So when we talk about the Moors, we gotta understand the origins of the Moors, and we gotta understand where they came from. And we know that the original Moor initiated, he came out of the equator, which is in, we know, the Sudan, modern day Sudan. It holds, well, what you want to call Ethiopia or Sudan, because that's the equator. I mean, you can see presence of the Twa, you can see presence of the Watusi, which is the big tall Watusi. That's the huge giants all the way down to the small Twa. That's the pygmies and that. So then they both went out of went out of Africa, uh, went down, went gave out all of the knowledge out throughout the world. So went to Spain, went to the places like what you want with Asia. I mean, when you want to talk about the Asians and when you want to say it's still remnants of the Asians, those Bantu Asians in South Africa still to this day. And it's also still the same remnants of those same genotype people in China and in Japan still to this day. So when you talk about, people going out and, civilizing and bringing out knowledge, look at Indonesia, look at all of the knowledge that they got and all the, structures and the craft that they, so that's knowledge that was being, taught in the, area of how to build and how to, perfect those, uh, sculptures. And, that's Moorish, all about building and, having knowing how to build. So when we talk about the Moors, you know, the Great Moor and the historical Moor, a lot of people want to get the Moroccan and the Moor and the historical Moor mixed up. And that's something. I guess it became, in a time interchangeable, intertwined. But the historical Moor and the Moroccan Moor is two different. That's a nationality, I guess. What you want to. That's after. That's a whole different thing. That's what we want to say. Those are soldiers, or what you. That's a whole different thing. The historical Moor has that E1B1A, the Nubians, the Twas, the Hutus. I mean, or the Tutsis. You know, that gave out all of the knowledge to the world. So, you know, the original Phoenicians, they was descended of, they saying the descendants of bloodline of the same E1B1A. Those are also the Canaanites. So, and they also are the Moors. So that's the whole the same bloodline, that Canaanite bloodline. So we gotta, you know, take all of that in consideration when we talking about the Moors and understanding it. We know and here in America, they still do festivals. Even in Europe, they still do festivals like a Feast of a Dead or kind of ceremony where they Christians and the Moors they come together and so-called natives they all come together and do like a tribal, like a a feast. So this is something that's being taken part of. They know of, and the feast is like I think of the ones that was being persecuted of called paganists at that point in time. They was fighting something, so it was something going on of a war that was going on taking place. So this was the a ritual that they came and paid homage to every after that paid their respects. So when we talk about the Moors, we got to take all those things in consideration. And I mean, a lot of people want to say that the enslavement and the Moors and slavery, but then that's going back to your Moroccan, and that's going back to when it became intertwined, like wars was fought. So You can't put the historical Moor and the Moroccan, two different people. Those are Spaniards. Uh, no, I can't really. Historical Moors, the Canaanites that came out of, like we don't want to keep going back, but they came out of, Upper Sumeria that originally came out of Sudan, Nubia. That's where it initially went to and established. A lot of people want to say that Sumeria is older than Egypt and predates all, but that's not true. Nubia predates Egypt and also predates Sumeria because those are the Nubians that went up into Sumeria and brought all of the knowledge that during the same time with the Egyptian dynasty. So we got to make sure we take all of this in consideration.
And not only that, we have to keep in mind that at this at during with all of this going on, you still have the pygmies who are in the jungle, who are, preserving that ancient culture, that natural culture. They are still in the mountains. So, despite when they're being when they're being persecuted, that's another reason that they migrate to different geographical locations. When there, sometimes when there is um, a problem or there's trouble or they're warring, there's battles. People do various
And
things.
I don't mean to cut in, but when you go back to the persecution they had, of the pygmies where they would go out and, take the blood and kill and was slaughtering the pygmies for the blood. This was something that was being done. We can clearly see in the Belgian colonial region throughout the Congo, how they was, capturing the smallest, little tiniest people, and because they thought the blood held some kind of, magical powers. And this is also the stuff they was doing with the mummies that they was finding and excavating in Egypt as well, and in Nubia, taking the mummies and eating on the mummies, thinking it was bringing some kind of natural or some kind of power. So feasting on black people, I want to, but it seemed like uh, knowing we hold some kind of power or some kind of esoteric
Supernatural,
meaning. So
right?
they knew that it was always known throughout history. It ain't just nothing that just being, some we bringing up now. This was always known that you was the supreme being.
And when you look back at the ancient Greeks and Europeans and Athenians, the oracles were always in charge of the sacred knowledge, and they were put in place by the high priest. And one of the reasons why they were put in such an elite essence is because they knew the origins of humanity. When you look back at Leonidas and Darius the Great, and oracles who encouraged him not to, go to war, that, it was going to be a problem. And one of the reasons that they encouraged him is because they knew their origins. They knew things that Leonidas did not. They knew that which he did not. Okay. And like I said, they knew their origins and they understood and they respected this essence of higher power. That is obvious about the oracles of the ancient Greeks and the ancient Athenians at that point in time. So, they understood and they respected the higher power. Now, each leader has a mind of his own, but it doesn't change the fact that their essence, this high priesthood, did express to the leader and the ruler at that point in time, whether he listens or he respected them or not. They did express to him that they respected the higher power, and they wanted him to respect the higher power as well. Okay. So that's one thing that is obvious when it comes down to the presence of the um, chosen ones, the golden child. When we talk about them being hunted down for their blood, and when we talk about this cannibalistic behavior, the uncivil, and like he said, it's obvious that they, and when you look back at some of their philosophers, and Socrates, Aristotle, Pythagoras, many of them definitely made reference of the fact that the ancients, is where many of them, obtain their knowledge. And once they obtain their knowledge, they looked at their people in a totally different aspect. No, take and understand that once Aristotle and Plato, Socrates traveled, when they Pythagoras, when they traveled to these different countries and these different, and they saw how advanced and these people were in their technology, and how civilized they were compared to where they had come from their area, from Greece and Europe. They went back and they began to look down on their own people. They began to despise the fact of the savagery, because they had a civilized mind, essence to their mindset.
But that right there was causing wars, and eventually causing wars with the Moor, because they felt like we was being held back, because you was still the one that was there, while and in Egypt at the same time. You was in Greece with them. You had your own little post while guarding them. They living like, but you can't protect, you can't control, because that's their nature. It's a so they looking at, and they form up and they get their army up ready to go to war with
angry.
Angry because you over there living in Luxor, a luxury, living in,
and that's
cushion.
One of the names.
You living in the cushion,
right? Well, that's the land of Cush,
and they living in the rock.
Right, the land of Cush was the ways of the land of the Cush. It was a cushion of a kingdom. It was, it was like the earth was their footstool, and that's how they were living. And of course, many of the Europeans were angry. They became jealous of how well they were living and how civilized versus how they were living. So, you begin to understand some of these things. And as we were stating, when we talk about the land of Cush, and the word luxury and Luxor. See, when they came from their rocks and their mountains and wiping their backsides with rocks and squatting in the middle of the street and, doing bowel movements right there, and they walking on, and people got boils on the back of their neck, dogs in the bed, just whatever, totally unsanitary. And they come to places like Luxor, and they see how civilized people are. They have a system, they're organized, they're clean, they're sanitized, they have a complete system of self-preservation. Okay. So they see that as a luxury. So when we talk about the word luxury, the word luxury comes from Luxor, and Luxor is a representation of the land of the mighty Cushites. Okay. The Nubians. Okay. The Cushites, the Kemites. And these people were, as he stated, they were living high off the hog, and there was resentment when these people traveled from the far lands, and even those who were there in the sands. The lookout, you had your lookout, the Magi. Many of them were out there, standing out, supposed to be keeping a watch and making sure that there were no invaders. And many of them got tired of standing out, keeping an eye out. They wanted to be, they wanted to rule just like we were ruling.
Which is really what you want to call the Asiatic or the Asian, because a lot of people will want to say that the Asiatic, but like we know, all the Asian really came in through. He did a lot of destruction himself. We can say, we can go back and throughout Asiatic or Persian or Arabian, or a lot of people
The
still
40
want to
thieves.
put that with the Moors, but I mean, a lot of the Asians themselves was going to war and did a lot of attacking, because he still was a large man army still to this day. We the only two people on the planet, the black and the Asian, are with the largest man army on the planet. So this is something that's been going on. You was fighting a war with him due to population, due to numbers, due to domination and control.
And when we talk about the tale of the 40 thieves, that's also an essence of the invasions of outsiders. These are not the original people. These are Semites. Many of them are Semite Semitics. They are not the original people. They are not the original inhabitants. And this is one of the reasons, because the original inhabitants and the original people from these places knew that all of these things lay there. They knew precisely where the Valley of the Kings was. They know where the Valley of the Queens was. They knew where King Tut's tomb was. They knew where Yuya's tomb was. They knew exactly where Potiphar's stuff was. The people that did not know where these things were the people who were invaders. The original inhabitants have no reason to break into their own tombs and to break into their own sacred temples and their own sacred places in order to obtain wealth and knowledge. They know how to generate and accumulate wealth. They have been doing it from the beginning of time. The people that were coming these are not the original inhabitants. These are the people who are outsiders. These are the people who are jealous and envious, and they knew once they found out that these treasures were there, that's when they began to invade. The original inhabitants had absolutely no reason to invade and to destroy their own temples, to invade the Valley of the Kings and the Queens, because that's them. That's a representation of themselves. So why would they want to destroy their own tombs? So you can clearly see where the outside influence begins to come in, and a lot of things began to change. And one thing is for sure, and two's for certain, is that the original inhabitants had no benefit. There was no benefit of them breaking into their own temples, into their own tombs and tomb raiding. Okay, they saw that as disrespectful to the dead. They have boundaries. They have laws, and to break into temples of dead people, to break into sacred places, that was being disobedient. It's against their rules. It goes against their culture. Okay, so we want to be clear about the difference between the indigenous people, the Nubians, the Cushites, um, the Twa, um, the um, Ethiopians. These people are definitely the original inhabitants of these sacred lands, these sacred temples, the Cushites, and that's the origins of the Moors. The Moors come from the land of Cush. Okay, the Moors are descendants of the Twa. They are descendants of the Cushites. They are the original Moors. Let's be clear here, because there's a total identity theft going on here. We have a major identity crisis that's going on here. All right, being a part of an organization. Many people have join an organization, and they now begin to consider themselves to be Moors and Moorish. But the original and the real Moors and the original Moors are Moors not by an organization, but they are Moors by genetic descent and genealogy and DNA. They are Moors of blood descent. Okay, so it has absolutely their connection. Has absolutely nothing to do with an organization. It has everything to do with their DNA, their genealogy, and their genetic makeup. And again, you can clearly see that these are descendants of the Twa, and throughout history, these people have been hunted down for their blood. They have been eaten upon, by the uncivil, savage, behavior, um, because they have been known to be the omnibenevolent. They have known to be the omni uh, the omnipotent, the preeminent people, and they are indigenous throughout the entire planet. So we want to keep focusing on that, because oftentimes I hear debates going on, and they get caught up into name word play. We talking about DNA. I'm talking about this right here. Okay. That's what I'm talking about right here. I don't want to hear nothing about, I join and I can't help you with the join. I want you I'm talking about DNA. If it's not original, if it's not dealing with those veins flowing through your body, like the rivers flowing through the Nile, and the rivers flowing throughout the planet, I really don't want to hear about it. Okay, because we have a lot of imposters, and we have had many imposters throughout history. If you look throughout history, everybody wants to be the chosen people. Everybody wants to be the original people. Okay, everybody wants to be something that they may not be. Okay, and it's really sad when you're not happy with who you are. um, and when we talk about the Moors, we're going to also talk about the bad stigma and the perpetual cycle of self hatred. Okay, we have a lot of things that have transpired throughout history in regards to the Moors. Now, when we talk about Moors and slavery, let's make this clear. I want you to show me any proof of a Moor, practicing chattel slavery on anyone. I want you to show me a Moor whipping, tying a man down at the stake and whipping him to death. I want you to show me a Moor that takes a person and chisels their teeth out. I want you to show me a Moor that is practicing this essence of chattel slavery. Now, when we talk about Moors and warring, Moors, of course, when you war, there were prisoners of war. If you were conquered by these people, you were taken as a prisoner, but you were more so an indentured servant. Indentured servitude, it lasts for 7 years. And after the 7 year period was up, you were to be, they were going. When it comes down to chattel slavery, I don't know this essence of Moors practicing somebody being their slave for life and whipping people to death. So those are things we need to be when we talk about Moors and slavery. We need to be a bit detailed and be a little bit more specific, and be make clarification when we address and talk about Moors and indentured servitude. It's a difference between indentured servitude and chattel slavery. Let's make that clear, because I think that we have a misunderstanding here. There is a difference between indentured servitude and chattel slavery and chattel slaves for life. Okay, so those are things we want to bring to the forefront. Um, and as I stated, one thing about the Moors have been very, very instrumental and very, very influential, intuitive of so much knowledge that has been spread throughout the entire planet. Um, they have gone around the planet. They have developed cultural and agricultural skills, various forms of modern day technology, writing skills, navigational skills and tools, battle strategies and formations, um, a variety of languages, mathematics, astrology, cosmology, musical instruments. So the Moors have done a whole lot, not just for Europe. They did plenty for in Asia. They have done a host of things and made a host of contributions in Timbukuno and over here on Turtle Island. Um, so we want to be precise when we talk about um these contributions, when we talk about, as I stated before, when we talk about various weaponry that we have now. It has modernized throughout time of evolution, but originally one of the first forms of weaponry was a bow and arrow. You can clearly see the Moors with the bow and arrow. You can see the Jaguar warrior with the bow and arrow. You see the Batois with the bow and arrow. So you see this all around the world. And from that bow and arrow, and before the bow and arrow, the first one of the first fighting styles with fists was Kubigan and Nigumi. Okay, and now you can see Kubigan and Nigumi being practiced throughout the Asian culture. Martial arts is being practiced throughout the Asian culture, but one of the first forms of martial arts was Kupigan and Negumi, the fighting styles with fists. And when you talk about Kupigan and Negumi, these are essences of the Pygmies, essences of the ancient Egyptians, essences of the Nubians and the Kushites in their travels. And as they're traveling, they're taking these beautiful attributes and all of these contributions. They're making all of these contributions in every geographical location that they are, on. So that's one of the beautiful things about us as a people, how kind and generous we are, how loving and how giving we are. And we have given to the entire to the entire world. Um, and we have not received enough credit for the contributions that we have made. Um, so we have to, and like I said, when we I want to be clear on this. I'm so sick and tired of us getting misconstrued when it comes down to slavery and chattel slavery. Prisoners of war and indentured servitude is totally different from chattel slavery and whipping a man to death, cutting off a person's limbs, um, doing all sorts of sick, savage things, cutting off somebody's buttocks, somebody's penis, somebody's ear. With George Washington Carver, what they um, um, he, they turned him into a eunuch. And that was something that was a part of the Arab empires as well, and the Persian empires as well. When they encountered and conquered some people, they took them in and they would turn them into a eunuch. They wanted to make sure that you were not a problem to the females in that palace, or the females of that ruler, his wives, his concubines. So they would turn some of the men that they would conquer into a eunuch, and and make them work and serve them. So we want to be clear, and as far as the contributions that have been made. Oftentimes we give a lot of credit to everybody else when we talk about Benjamin Franklin, um, and some of these people, Columbus, who traveled. We're not talking about Pedro the Moor. We're not talking about the reason why Christopher Columbus was got uh, lost, and he was a little misconstrued, is because he didn't understand how to read compass. Those were not things that we had taught them. Who knows, where did he get the compass from?
Well, he was guided by Moors initially. He was guided by Moor.
But he tried to double
The
back.
second time he was guided by Moor, but the first time he initially got lost because he landed on a place where he didn't know, which was North America. He already knew South America because he done landed there before. They say he done been there four different times, but then he got lost. Like I think his third or fourth journey, he got lost. So on his first time, when he arrived in no, the second time he arrived in North America, and that was a strange land. But when he came to, he saw swarthy people, black
Right,
people. They was already swarthy,
right,
Negroid, a Negroid feature. They were already there, already had something established, had some kind of trading with some kind of different royal corpse going on and stuff. He came from a whole different corpse. Where did he come from? He came from Spain, didn't he? Okay, so the black people that he already came through and encountered with, those were French. Those were French uh, subjects, or they was had a trade and bargain going on already with with the Frenchmen, because it was already evidence of the French being uh, iron smelting going on, presence already here in America, and that was already being done. And they saying it was guided by the Moors, who it was obviously Moors was obviously over here, bringing this iron back over to France. So clearly, when he got over here, it was already some establishment going on with a whole different royal corpse, and he had to go back and tell Spain, what what I saw. And Spain was people want to say he went back, but Spain was also, it was also, occupied in South America because he didn't know where he landed to due to the cataract. So if he could go back, he had to go back down, to South America to let them know, what he just came up and what he saw. He had to let the Spanish, know what did I just see. So I mean, this was documented, but I mean,
But what was also documented is his attitude towards the fact that everywhere he went, when he did bump up on this new land, that this unfamiliar territory, he saw the same familiar type of people. And that began to irritate him. Everywhere we go, they are there. We're just now getting out and discovering these new places, and they already here. They already here living their life. They got a culture. They got their thing going on. I mean, we just now. So they were upset and angry about the fact that but they, what they did not realize is they the last of you, the last of the Mohicans. You the baby on the planet. So that's why you the last. That's why you know all these other places were way more were established. All the there was civilizations, and that's why they're so fascinated with discovering civilizations and culture right now to this day. That's one of the reasons why you see them going from one geographical location into another, digging up uh bodies, digging up, unearthing things because they're fascinated and they are amazed versus those who are descendants and those who are indigenous. We amazed and fascinated, but not to the extent in which they are, because we already know these things. We have already known that because we have existed for millions of years. Okay, so you have to understand that they are still in discovery mode. They're still trying to understand things, okay? Many things that are complex to them are not complex to us. We understand because we have been around far longer than they have. We have far more knowledge on many subject matters than they do. And the hard part about that, the sad part about is that they really don't want to admit that. They want to make it seem as if they know everything and they know, and nobody knows it all. Even with all of the knowledge that we have, and as long as we've been around for the millions and billions of years that we've been here, we're still understanding, discovering new things each and every single day. With every day comes a new horizon. Okay. So I think that this was very, very peaceful. I think it was very informative. And as I stated before, you know, um, when it comes down to the Moors, not only did they teach, governing in Europe, they taught an essence of governing in Asia, on over here on Turtle Island and in Timbukuno. And let me be clear, because a lot of people are not understanding where Timbukuno is. Timbukuno is America. Okay? It is North America. Turtle Island is North America. Timbuktu is located in a city in Mali. Okay. So we don't want to misunderstand. Okay. But both of these places, Timbuktu and Timbuktu, are both, and both were preoccupied and are still occupied by the indigenous peoples. They are still occupied by the Batois right now to this day. Okay. So, Hotep, with that being said, I'm going to go. Um, and as I stated, Brother Anu, do you have anything else you like to contribute to the conversation? Okay. Okay. Well, Hotep,
hotel.